On the day I turned 75, a milestone I hadn't really intended to celebrate, my sister Vivian glanced at me from the far end of the lengthy dining table and smiled. "Dila," she said, her voice distinct and clear. "Are you relishing your trust fund of $500,000? I looked back at her, puzzled. Her statement felt like an unfinished thought, much like jigsaw pieces that don't fit together. Gradually, the question sunk in, and I sensed a tightness in my chest. "Which trust fund are you referencing?" I murmured, almost inaudibly. My son Reggie dropped his utensil. My daughter-in-law Chelsea turned as white as a ghost. They both appeared to wish the sleek marble floor of their suburban home would just open up and swallow them whole. Then Vivian shifted her focus toward them, using that no-nonsense tone I recognized from her corporate world. "What did you both do with the funds?" she questioned. The ensuing silence was anything but ordinary. It felt loaded. It felt guilty. It was the kind of silence that echoes the truths nobody wants to confront. That night, the atmosphere in the house lacked the scent of a birthday celebration. Instead, it bore a resemblance to a farewell, one that you feel coming but choose not to acknowledge. I was seated at the head of the table, as always, feeling like nothing more than an accessory next to the fine dinnerware and crystal goblets that I had never possessed in my tiny apartment. Here I was, 75 years old. 75 years. My son Reggie had insisted very strongly on marking my birthday in his lavish home, leaving me unable to say no. It wasn't that I desired to be there, but a mother's quest for her children's love never fades, even if it means sacrificing her own dignity. I am Delilah Ames. I grew up in a community where girls were raised to be submissive, to listen, to put on a smile, even when they felt shattered inside. I married early, had 2 kids, and lost my husband 5 years ago. Since then, I have been living alone in a small 1-bedroom apartment in a place called The Heights, getting by on a meager Social Security check that just about covers my food expenses. Reggie resides in a 3-story house with a vast lawn and a swimming pool. Chelsea, my daughter-in-law, wears high-end fashion and switches her SUV for a new one every couple of years. My grandchildren are enrolled in exclusive preparatory schools where the monthly fees exceed my rent for 3 months altogether. I always thought they merely worked exceptionally hard, that they had earned every bit of what they had, and that I had no right to ask for anything since I had already fulfilled my role in raising them. But that evening, when Vivian made her remark, something within me finally shattered. Or maybe it just awakened. Vivian Ellington is my younger sister. She is 70 years old and lives 2 states away. She is thriving, managing her own consulting agency, exploring the globe, dressed in custom suits and expensive fragrance. We don't get together often, perhaps once or twice annually. It's not that we clash, but rather that our lives have diverged significantly. She created a successful business. I focused on raising a family, or so I believed. Vivian showed up that evening bearing a present wrapped in golden paper and a bottle of exquisite wine that likely cost more than my groceries for the month. She embraced me tightly as she always did. She complimented my appearance, even though we were both aware it wasn't true. I was skinnier, more fatigued, and less vibrant. She settled beside me and began sharing stories about her travels, her work, and life in general. Reggie and Chelsea managed strained smiles from across the table. My grandchildren were upstairs in their rooms, likely absorbed in their devices. The discussion felt shallow, uncomfortable, and punctuated by lengthy silences that nobody knew how to fill. Then Vivian poured herself another glass of wine, looked at me with that intense gaze she always had when about to reveal something significant, and said, "Dila, I've been pondering something for quite a while." I nodded, completely unprepared for what was to come. "Are you enjoying the $500,000 trust fund?" she asked nonchalantly, as if she were commenting on the weather. Time froze. My ears rang. $500,000. A trust fund. I couldn't grasp what she meant. I stared at Vivian as if she were speaking in a foreign tongue. "What trust fund are you referring to?" I asked, my voice so soft it was almost unrecognizable to me. Vivian frowned. She looked directly at me. The trust fund your husband arranged for you before he died. You've not accessed it. I felt the ground shift beneath me. My husband, my deceased husband, had established a trust fund. He never mentioned it. I never saw any paperwork. I never received any funds. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I have no knowledge of that, I murmured, feeling the thread of tears welling up. Vivian set her wine glass on the table with a hard thud, her expression turning serious. She was no longer the kind sister who brought gifts. She transformed into the determined businesswoman who accepted neither falsehoods nor treachery. She faced Reggie and Chelsea, who sat frozen like statues. "What did you do with the money?" she asked in a tone so icy it felt as if it lowered the room's temperature. Reggie cleared his throat and attempted to smile. "Aunt Vivian, there seems to be some confusion," he said. "There is no confusion," Vivian interrupted him. "I saw your father sign those papers. I was a witness. There is $500,000 in a trust for Delilah that cannot be changed, with specific instructions for her to receive monthly payments for the rest of her life." "Where is that money?" Chelsea quickly stood up, her chair nearly tipping over. "I need to go to the restroom," she said quietly, almost running out of the room. Reggie remained seated, struggling to formulate words like a fish out of water. He avoided making eye contact with me. In that instant, I understood. I realized my sister was right. I recognized that my son had stolen from me. I understood that everything he possessed, everything he boasted about, and everything that made me feel like a burden had been funded by my own money. "Mama," Reggie started, using that childish, whiny tone he had when he was in trouble. "Let me explain." But I raised a hand to stop him. I wasn't ready to listen to him just yet. I needed to comprehend the situation. I needed to think. I needed to calm down. Vivian took out her phone. "I'm calling Elias Carter," she said decisively. "He is the lawyer who managed your father's trust. He has all the records and documents." Reggie turned even paler. "Auntie, that's not needed." "Oh yes, it is needed," Vivian answered, already dialing. I stayed in my seat, staring blankly at my uneaten food. My mind was racing. My husband had left me $500,000. $500,000. I had been surviving on less than $800 a month, skipping meals, wearing old clothes, and feeling like a burden to my son. And all that time, he had been using my money. Tears began to stream down my face uncontrollably. These weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of anger, humiliation, and a betrayal so deep it felt like it shattered my heart. Vivian hung up and placed her hand over mine. "Elias is on his way here," she said gently. "We will resolve this, I promise." Reggie stayed frozen, his face red and his forehead sweaty. Chelsea still hadn't come back from the bathroom. What was meant to be a birthday party had turned into an interrogation, and I, the guest of honor, was the only one unaware that I was the victim of a crime. To truly grasp how I found myself in that situation, one must go back with me to see who I was before that night, before realizing that my own flesh and blood had taken the life I rightfully deserved. I had always been the unseen person, the one who served coffee but never enjoyed it, the one who prepared meals for everyone else but ate the scraps, the one who listened to others' problems but never shared her own. That was my upbringing. That was how I raised my kids. That was how I spent 75 years of my life. My husband, Jeremiah, he passed away 5 years ago due to an unexpected heart attack. He was diligent, sincere, and reserved, much like myself. His career spanned his entire life, working as an accountant at a medium-sized company. We weren't rich, but we managed to get by. Our home was modest, we owned an old car, and lived a straightforward life, or at least that's what I believed. His death left me shattered. It was not only the grief of losing him that hit me hard, but also the overwhelming feeling of being adrift. He took care of all the finances, handled the paperwork, and made significant choices. I merely signed wherever he indicated. I never questioned his decisions or had any doubts. I had faith in him completely. After the funeral, Reggie assumed all the responsibilities. He took care of the documents and communicated with the lawyers. He mentioned that Dad had some debts and that the pension I would receive would be minimal. He said we had to sell our family home to meet those financial responsibilities. I accepted everything he said without a hint of resistance. What did I really know about finances? What was my understanding of legal matters? I ended up moving into a small one-bedroom apartment far from where I used to live, with a tiny kitchen and a bathroom that always had plumbing issues. My monthly rent was $350, and my pension was $800. Each day, I had to stretch my budget to make things work. I purchased the least expensive food at the grocery store. I chose to walk instead of taking the bus to save money. I switched off lights every time I left a room. Reggie came to visit me once a month, if that. He was always in a hurry and glued to his phone. He would give me $200 and say it was all he could afford. I expressed my gratitude to him as if he were offering me a fortune. Those $200 meant the difference between having chicken and just rice for the week. Chelsea never accompanied him. She claimed to be preoccupied with the kids, her job, and countless matters. Whenever I did see her, she looked at me with a blend of pity and contempt, as though I were an old piece of furniture that had outlived its usefulness but couldn't be discarded. My grandchildren viewed me as a stranger. When Reggie invited me to their home during the holidays, they hardly acknowledged my presence. They would hurry upstairs to their rooms filled with expensive toys and huge televisions. I remained downstairs in the large living room, feeling small and out of place. I looked around their house and couldn't fathom how my son had accomplished so much. It had 3 stories, marble floors, fancy furniture, and a kitchen that seemed fit for a magazine photo shoot. Chelsea flaunted her designer bags. Reggie discussed his financial ventures. I wondered if he might be more intelligent than his dad, more driven, more skilled. I never realized that all he possessed actually belonged to me. The time spent in my flat felt identical each day. I awoke early even though I had no plans. I drank weak coffee because the quality stuff was too pricey. I gazed out the window at people rushing to their jobs, their routines, their goals. I no longer had one of my own. I tidied the apartment even when it was already tidy. I sat and watched soap operas that didn't interest me just to hear voices besides my own. I prepared meals for just myself, saving leftovers for the following day and beyond. My neighbors were friendly, yet kept their distance. Everyone was busy with their work and families. I was the elderly woman in apartment 203, the one who greeted others in the hallway, the one who stayed out of trouble, the one who paid her rent promptly by selling off bits of jewelry I had left once the funds ran dry. I had a friend named Petty. She resided in the adjacent unit. She was also a widow but received a better pension. Her kids contacted her daily, visited on weekends, and funded her outings. I quietly envied her. Pet was observant. She inquired why my son rarely visited, why I wore the same outfits repeatedly, and why she occasionally heard me crying at night when I thought no one could listen. One afternoon, while sharing tea in her home, she shared something that stayed with me. "Delilah, you've always been the kind of person to keep everything inside, to tolerate, to be silent, yet no one will reward you for suffering quietly. Sometimes you need to stop holding things in. Sometimes you need to release what's harming you." I chuckled nervously. I assured her that I was okay, that I wanted for nothing, that my son did what he could for me. But Pet looked at me firmly and shook her head. "One day you will wake up, Delilah, and when that happens, I hope it isn't too late." I didn't comprehend her message. Then memories came flooding back. I recalled when Reggie was young and I worked in office cleaning to afford his college applications. I remembered the restless nights when he was ill and I couldn't pay for a doctor, but I took him anyway. I remembered selling my wedding band to cover his university fees. I also thought back to how he began to feel embarrassed by me as he matured. how he stopped introducing me to his friends. He requested that I not pick him up from school because the other children teased him about my old clothes. Just like when he got married, they put me in the very back row of the church, making me feel like just another attendee instead of the mother of the groom. I kept telling myself this was just how things were. Kids grow up and move on. I had to accept that I shouldn't impose on them. That word impose. How often had I heard it before? How often had I convinced myself, I don't want to be an imposition. I can't ask for more help. They've already helped me plenty. I'm okay on my own. Deceptions. All untruths I told myself to avoid confronting the reality. The reality is that my son had emotionally distanced himself from me long before he took my money. The reality was that I let myself be treated poorly because I thought that was love. That was what good motherhood looked like. The weeks prior to my birthday felt unusual. Reggie contacted me more often than usual. He urged me to join him for the celebration. He mentioned Chelsea was making something special and that the kids wanted to see me. I agreed, excited. I thought maybe I was finally being included, that maybe they were finally noticing me. Petty helped me prepare for that evening. She gave me a lovely shawl, styled my hair, and said I looked lovely. However, she added something else, something that felt like a caution. If anything seems off tonight, don't hold back. You deserve more than you realize. I laughed it off. I told her not to fret, that I was simply going to dinner with my family, and that everything would be all right. But as the rideshare took me to Reggie's house, I felt a strange unease in my stomach, a sensation I couldn't pinpoint, as if my body was aware of something my mind refused to acknowledge. When I reached the house, it was lit up brightly. Gentle music played, and the scent of fine food wafted through the air. Reggie opened the door with an overly large grin. Chelsea gave me a kiss on the air next to my cheek. Too sugary. The kids rushed down to hug me briefly before running off again. Too rehearsed. Everything felt excessive. Seated at that big table, I felt more isolated than in my empty home. Then Vivian showed up. My sister, whom I had not expected to see there, whom Reggie clearly hadn't anticipated, the one who could uncover the secrets he had so neatly constructed. Everything began to change 3 weeks before my birthday. Although I wasn't aware of it at the time, I was still leading my ordinary life, my small existence, trying to get by on $800 a month, clinging to the hope that things would get better. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was in my living room watching the news when the phone rang. It was Reggie. That was strange right there. He didn't call on Tuesdays. He usually called on Sundays, if he called at all. The talks were always Mom. He spoke in an unusual tone. A voice attempted to come across as laid back, but held a certain emotion that I could not quite place. How are you doing? I'm fine, son. Is everything all right over there? Yeah, everything's good. I wanted to bring up your upcoming birthday. It's soon, right? I turned 75. I hadn't given it much thought. What's the point? There was nothing worth celebrating, just another year of solitude, another year of counting pennies. Yes, it's the 23rd, I replied without much excitement. Chelsea and I want to plan something nice. A dinner at our place. Does that sound good? I was taken aback. They had never planned anything for me before. Last year I spent my birthday alone, just eating soup from a can in front of the TV. You don't need to make a fuss, I automatically said. I'm all right. I don't want anything. Mom, it's not an issue. We really want to do this. The kids are excited to come too. It'll be nice. Something about his tone made me feel uneasy. He sounded too eager, too worried. Still, I wanted to trust him. I wanted to think that perhaps my son was finally acknowledging me, that he truly cared. All right, I agreed. Thanks, son. That sounds great. I'll arrange for a car to pick you up that day. You don't have to stress about anything. He hung up quickly as usual, leaving me with the phone in my hand, feeling a blend of emotions and doubt. Why now? Why this year? What had shifted? The next few days were like any other, but I couldn't stop thinking about that dinner. It filled me with hope. It made me dream that perhaps my relationship with Reggie could improve, that maybe he had thought about things, that maybe he remembered all I had done for him. A week later, Reggie called again. His voice sounded more tense this time. "Mom, I need to ask you something. Have you had a chance to talk to Aunt Vivian recently?" I was caught off guard by the question. Vivian and I chatted every couple of months, usually brief talks. She was always busy. I never had much to share. "No, I haven't talked to her for about 2 months. Why do you ask?" "Just curious, no particular reason. By the way, regarding the dinner, it's better if it's a more private affair. Just us. Close family. What do you think?" "Of course, son. Whatever you prefer." But something about that discussion left me feeling uneasy. Why was he inquiring about Vivian? What relevance did she have to my birthday? Pet noticed my worry. She always did. We were having tea in her apartment when I mentioned it. "He says he wants to have dinner for my birthday," I told her. "But I'm not sure. He seems off, anxious." Pet set her cup down and looked at me earnestly. "Delilah, do you have faith in your son?" The question hurt. He is my son. Naturally, I do trust him, even if he never comes to see you, even if he makes you live on a smaller amount than what he gives as tips. Despite residing in a large house, you count every cent just to buy bread. He does his best for me. I stood up for him. I have always stood up for him. It was my duty. It's what mothers do. And what if he is not helping you at all? What if he is actively working against you? "Please don't say that," I pleaded, feeling tears nearly fall. "Reggie is not like that." Plet sighed. She took my hand. "Delilah, hear me out. You are a wonderful person, perhaps too wonderful. And those who are kind often find themselves stepped on by others who lack morals. I'm not claiming your son is bad. I'm simply urging you to be aware. Don't believe everything you are told without questioning it first." Her statements lingered in my mind for many days. I attempted to brush them off. I tried to persuade myself that she was mistaken, that she was resentful, projecting her challenges onto my situation. But at night, when rest eluded me, I began to question. Why was Reggie living comfortably while I was left with nothing? Why did my husband only leave me that meager pension after working for 40 years? Why did Reggie manage all the paperwork without allowing me to see anything? One afternoon, I made the choice to investigate. I wasn't sure what I was searching for, but I needed to uncover something, anything at all. I retrieved the box of documents I had kept in the closet, old papers, paid bills, photographs, and keepsakes. At the bottom, I found a folder containing documents from my husband's funeral, including receipts, certificates, and a letter from the lawyer who took care of everything. The letter was directed to Reggie. It mentioned something about wrapping up the estate's matters, yet it lacked specific details, nothing I could comprehend. There was a name, Elias Carter, attorney at law, alongside a phone number. I held that paper for a long time. Should I make the call? What would I say? What authority did I have to interfere in issues that Reggie had already managed? But Pet's words rang in my ears. Be aware. Don't accept everything. I placed the paper in my handbag. I didn't call that day or the following one, but I carried it around as if it were a dangerous device I couldn't activate. The Friday prior to my birthday, Reggie unexpectedly appeared at my apartment. That was unusual. He never showed up without a prior phone call. He knocked on the door, and I nearly jumped from surprise. "Son, what a surprise," I said as I opened the door. He entered the room, surveying his surroundings as if it were his first encounter. It seemed like he had never noticed the hardships I faced, as if the reality of my difficult situation had just struck him. "Mama, I need to have a word with you," he stated, remaining standing. "Is something wrong? Are you all right?" Yes, I just wanted to check if you're coming for dinner on Tuesday. It's important that you're there." "Definitely, I'll be there. You've mentioned it already." He ran his fingers through his hair. He was perspiring despite the coolness of the apartment. "Haven't you spoken to anyone? Has anyone reached out about Dad? About finances?" My heart began to race. No. Who would contact me? No one. I'm just checking. Sometimes, scammers phone widows claiming they have inheritances or similar things. If anyone does call you, ignore them and inform me right away. "Okay, son." He gave me a quick peck on the forehead and rushed out as swiftly as he had come in. I remained in the center of the room, sensing that something dreadful was imminent. That night, sleep eluded me. I kept tossing and turning, mulling over everything: the odd calls, the unexpected visit, cautions about fraudsters, and the insistence about dinner. The following day, I retrieved the piece of paper with the lawyer's contact number. I stared at it for hours. Ultimately, with shaky hands, I made the call. A secretary responded. "Carter Law Group, good afternoon." "Good afternoon. I would like to speak with Mr. Elias Carter." "Who should I say is calling?" "Delilah Ames. I'm the widow of Jeremiah Ames. He took care of some matters for my husband 5 years ago." There was a pause. "One moment, please." The wait felt endless. I nearly hung up 3 times, yet something held me back. At last, a male voice replied, "Mrs. Ames, this is Elias Carter. It's a surprise to hear from you after such a long time." "I apologize for bothering you," I replied, my voice shaking. "I wanted to inquire about my husband's documents. You assisted with everything after his passing." "Yes, that's correct. I collaborated with your son, Reggie, on the paperwork, and there was mention of a trust fund." The silence from him was so loud that I wondered if the call had dropped. "Mrs. Ames," the attorney finally spoke, his tone grave, "I believe we need to discuss this as a matter of urgency." My birthday started off drearily, as if the sky was aware of the truth I was still trying to deny. I woke up early, even though dinner was scheduled for the evening. I couldn't rest, thinking about my conversation with attorney Elias Carter. After that call, he had requested a meeting. He said there were matters I needed to be informed about, information that should have been disclosed to me 5 years earlier. However, I requested him to hold on. I explained that I had a family dinner and we could chat afterward. I'm not sure why I made that choice. Perhaps it was because a part of me still wished to think that it was all a mix-up, that my son hadn't betrayed me. Petty knocked on my door during the late morning. She had a small cake with a single candle on it. "I want you to blow out at least 1 candle on your birthday," she said with a melancholic smile. We sat in my living room, enjoying the cake and some watery coffee. She gazed at me as if she wanted to say something, but hesitated. "What's wrong?" I inquired. "You seem stranger than usual. Did anything happen?" I shared with her the call to the lawyer, his puzzling words, and the sense that something awful was about to come to light. Pet set her plate aside. "Delilah, listen closely. No matter where you go tonight, don't keep quiet. If something feels off, speak up. If anyone shows you disrespect, just get up and leave. You don't owe anyone anything, particularly not the person who has made you feel insignificant your entire life." "He's my son," I murmured, "and you are his mother, the one who exhausted herself for him, the one who even sold her wedding ring to secure his future. Remember that when he tries to make you feel like you should be grateful to him." Her words hit me hard. She embraced me tightly before departing. "Call me when you get home. I don't care what time it is." I was left alone, keeping my eyes on the clock. Hours moved by slowly, like a torturous wait. I took a bath and put on the only somewhat presentable dress I owned, an old brown one that at least had no rips. I styled my hair in the mirror and saw a tired, worn version of myself. 75 years, an entire life. And for what? To remain alone in a sad apartment, waiting for my son to give me some attention once a year. Reggie arranged a ride-share to take me at 7 o'clock. The driver was pleasant and asked if I was heading to a celebration. I replied, "Yes, it's my birthday." He wished me a happy birthday, and I thanked him. I didn't share that I felt like I was on my way to my own funeral. When the car arrived at Reggie's home, my stomach knotted. The house was shining brightly. It was 3 stories of luxury that I could never comprehend how my son could purchase. Perfectly manicured lawns, luxury vehicles parked out front. Everything felt so far removed from the small apartment where I saved every cent just to buy rice. I pressed the doorbell. Chelsea answered the door, wearing a dress that likely cost more than my rent for 6 months. Her smile was flawless, almost too flawless. "Delilah, I'm so pleased you could make it. Happy birthday. She greeted me with 2 air kisses that didn't even graze my cheek. As I stepped into the house, the aroma of fancy food enveloped me. Shrimp, wine, freshly baked bread, everything beyond my financial reach. She guided me to the living room where Reggie and the kids were gathered. He rose to welcome me. "Mama, happy birthday!" He embraced me, but it felt empty, like a hug given out of duty. The grandchildren nodded from the couch, barely acknowledging me. They whispered a mechanical, "Hi, Grandma," before returning to their screens. I settled into a chair, feeling out of place at my own birthday gathering. Chelsea appeared with wine glasses. "Would you like one, Delilah?" "No, thank you. Water is sufficient." "Are you certain? It's a very nice imported Cabernet." "I'm sure." Reggie seemed uneasy. I noticed how often he shifted position and how he checked his phone every couple of minutes. He tried to engage in conversation, but his words felt empty, rehearsed. After 30 minutes of forced dialogue, consisting of surface-level inquiries about my health and comments on the weather, I just wanted the dinner to conclude so I could leave. Then the doorbell rang. Reggie's face went white. Chelsea nearly dropped her glass but managed to catch it in time. They exchanged a look filled with emotions I couldn't interpret. Fear, maybe, or panic. "Are you expecting someone else?" I inquired. "No," Reggie replied hastily, perhaps too hastily. "It must be a mistake." However, the doorbell rang again, more insistently this time. Chelsea went to answer it. I heard voices at the door. One voice, a woman's, was immediately familiar, even though I hadn't heard it for months. Vivian, my sister, burst into the living room like a tempest, looking as elegant as ever in her gray tailored suit, high heels, expensive fragrance, and immaculate hair. She held a sizable gift wrapped in gold and a bottle of wine. "Dila!" she exclaimed joyfully, rushing to embrace me in a heartfelt hug that felt genuine and tight. "Happy birthday, sister. 75 years. I can hardly believe it." I was taken aback. "Vivian, I didn't know you were coming." "I wanted to give you a surprise. Reggie mentioned you were having a birthday dinner and I couldn't miss it. 75 years is a big deal." I glanced at Reggie, and it was clear from his expression that he hadn't mentioned anything to her. Vivian had arrived on her own, and he hadn't anticipated her visit. He hadn't wanted her there. "Aunt Vivian, what a surprise," Reggie said, his tone strained. "We didn't know you would be here." "That's why it's surprising, dear nephew." Vivian settled next to me and held my hand. "How are you, Delilah? You seem to have lost weight." "I'm all right," I responded untruthfully. "Are you certain? Are you eating properly? Do you have enough to get by?" Her inquiries made me uneasy, not due to their bluntness, but because they were genuine. They brought up the reality I always concealed. Yes, everything is okay." Vivian gazed at me as if she doubted my words, but she chose not to press further. Instead, she shifted her attention to Reggie and Chelsea. "You have such a lovely home. Every visit surprises me more. How's business, Reggie?" "Good. Everything is operating smoothly." "I'm pleased to hear that because I understand maintaining this kind of lifestyle isn't simple. The private schools for your kids, the vehicles, this house, all of it demands finances. But I suppose your investments have paid off." Reggie cleared his throat. "I've been fortunate. Luck helps, but having some starting funds is important, right?" The atmosphere grew heavy. I wasn't sure why, but there was something in Vivian's voice that felt different, as if she was engaged in a game with rules known only to her. Chelsea returned from the kitchen. "Dinner is served." We moved into the spacious dining area, where a large wooden table could accommodate 12 guests. The setting was filled with fine china, silver utensils, and cloth napkins, all so elegant, so contrasting to my own life. They positioned me at the table's head as the honored guest. Vivian was seated to my right. Reggie and Chelsea sat directly across from me, while the children quietly occupied the ends of the table with bored expressions. The meal was delightful: salad with unfamiliar ingredients, baked salmon, herb-seasoned potatoes, and pricey wine that was consumed by everyone except me, along with polite chatter that didn't convey much. Then Vivian set her fork down, took a considerable sip of wine, glanced at me with an unreadable expression, and said the words that would alter everything. "Delilah, there's something I've been meaning to ask you. Are you enjoying the $500,000 trust fund?" Time seemed to freeze. All noise in the dining room faded away. The sound of my heart pounding echoed in my ears. $500,000. Trust fund. The phrases were baffling to me. "Which trust fund are you referring to?" I inquired, my voice shaky. Vivian looked confused. "The trust fund your husband Jeremiah arranged for you before he died. I was there when he signed the paperwork. $500,000 set aside for you to ensure a comfortable future so you would never go without." Tears started welling in my eyes. I have no knowledge about that. Vivian placed her glass down sharply. Her demeanor altered entirely. She was no longer the caring sister. She had transformed into a tough businesswoman. She faced Reggie and Chelsea and demanded, "Where is the money?" The ensuing silence was oppressive. It felt as if it was suffocating me. Reggie and Chelsea stood frozen, like statues, as if time stood still just for them. My grandchildren appeared perplexed, transferring their gaze from one adult to the other, unsure of what was occurring. I was also confused, but something deep within me was aware of the reality. I had sensed it since the conversation with the lawyer. It had been apparent since Reggie's unusual visits. Perhaps I had been aware of it for 5 years, yet I refused to acknowledge it. "Aunt Vivian," Reggie started, his voice trembling. "I believe there has been a mix-up." "There's no mix-up," Vivian interrupted him with an icy tone I had never heard before. "I was in the office of attorney Elias Carter. Your father requested my presence to witness the signing of those papers. There's $500,000 placed in an irrevocable trust for Delilah with guaranteed monthly payouts for her lifetime. $4,000 each month. Everything is secured by law, so she wouldn't have to worry about finances. $4,000 a month. I survived on $750. Those words wouldn't fit in my mind. They seemed unbelievable. "Mama," Reggie finally turned to me, "let me explain." But Vivian raised her hand to silence him. "No. Answer my question first. Where is that money? Why is your mother living in such a sad apartment with a pension that barely covers her food? Why is she unaware of the trust?" Chelsea stood up so quickly her chair almost toppled. "I need to use the restroom," she mumbled, nearly rushing out of the dining room. The kids got up as well. "Can we go to our rooms?" the older one inquired. "Go," Reggie replied without looking at them. Now it was just the three of us, Vivian filled with rage, Reggie filled with fear, and me in between, watching my world fall apart bit by bit. "Reggie," I spoke in a voice that sounded foreign to me, "is what your aunt claims true?" He rubbed his hands across his face, drenched in sweat. His hands trembled. "Mama, it's complicated." "It's not complicated," Vivian interrupted. "It's straightforward. Yes or no? Did you have knowledge about the trust fund?" Silence. "You knew," my sister insisted. "Yes," Reggie finally murmured. "I knew." Those words struck me like stones, like physical assaults, like a betrayal that took my breath away. "And why was I unaware?" I questioned, tears flowing uncontrollably. Reggie avoided my gaze. Dad appointed me as the administrator of the trust. He entrusted me with handling it all. "I believed it would be wiser to invest it, to increase the money, to ensure the family's well-being." "Which family's well-being are you referring to?" Vivian questioned with disdain. "Your well-being? Since it's evident that your mother's well-being meant nothing to you. She is the one entitled to it, not you. That money was intended for her. I was planning to give it to her," Reggie weakly explained, "at the appropriate moment." "When would that be?" I yelled. I couldn't restrain myself any longer. After 75 years of keeping my feelings bottled up, something inside me broke. "When is the right moment, Reggie? When I was starving? When I couldn't pay my bills?" "Mom, it's not like that." "Then how is it?" My voice trembled with anger and hurt. Explain to me, how have I managed on less than $800 monthly for 5 years while you held my funds? Tell me, how is it that I had to sell my possessions just to eat while you were buying expensive cars? Explain to me, how could I feel like a burden to you when you were living off my money all along? Vivian took out her phone. I'm calling Elias Carter right now. He has all the paperwork, all the evidence, and we are going to settle this once for all. Auntie, hold on, Reggie begged. It's not needed. Oh, it is definitely needed. Vivian was already inputting the number. Absolutely necessary. Reggie looked at me with desperate eyes. Mom, please, we can resolve this amongst ourselves. We don't need lawyers involved. Resolve it how? I countered. By offering me the little bit you choose to give me when it fits you. By continuing with the lies. Chelsea walked back into the dining room. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She stood near the doorway as if she might flee at any second. Vivian held the phone to her ear. Elias, it's Vivian Ellington. I'm with my sister Delilah. We need you to come right away. Yes, it's regarding the Jeremiah Ames Trust Fund. Pause. Perfect. We'll wait for you. She ended the call and looked at all of us. He's coming here. He's bringing all the paperwork. We're going to resolve this tonight. You can't do this, Chelsea protested in a high-pitched voice. This is our home, and that is money that belongs to my sister. Vivian responded coldly. Money that you took from her. We didn't take anything, Reggie countered. I was the legal administrator. I had the authority to make decisions. You had the authority to manage the funds for your mother's benefit, not for your advantage. Vivian stepped closer to him. Do you know what this is called? Embezzlement, fraud, theft, and other offenses that could lead to prison time? Reggie paid more. I didn't want to cause Mama any pain. I simply believed I could use the funds more effectively, grow it, increase it. Did you grow it? Vivian inquired. Where is the initial $500,000 along with 5 years of investment profit? Because from what I observe, it's wrapped up in this house, in those vehicles, in the pricey clothes your wife is sporting, all funded by your mother's earnings while she was in need. I sat still, hearing everything as if I were watching a film, as if it wasn't my life unfolding, as if they weren't discussing my own son. My son, who had taken from me, deceived me, and allowed me to endure hardship while he enjoyed a lavish life funded by my money. Reggie, I eventually spoke, maintaining a steady tone. A bit too steady, the kind of calm that follows a tempest. Look me in the eyes. He raised his gaze slowly. Did you ever feel remorse? In these 5 years, did you ever ponder about me living in that dreadful apartment while you rested in your luxurious bed purchased with my cash? Mama, please respond yes or no. Silence. That silence conveyed all I needed to understand. And you? I glanced at Chelsea. You were aware? She barely nodded, cowardice marking her demeanor. She couldn't even vocalize it. You too, I stated, rising from the chair. You stood by as I struggled. You saw me count my coins. You watched me wear the same tattered clothes time after time. You saw me decline invitations because I didn't even have money for the bus. And you remained silent. You didn't intervene. You kept taking my money and let me feel I was a burden to you. Tears streamed down my face, yet my voice remained steady. Something within me shifted. Something had fractured, but something else had also strengthened. The worst part, I went on, is that you took the money. The worst part is that you stole my self-respect. You made me feel worthless, foolish, and like an old woman, useless. You made me think I should be grateful for the scraps you offered me. All the while, you had knowledge of the truth. Reggie attempted to come closer, but I raised my hand. Do not touch me, Mama. I'm sorry. I can return everything. I promise. With what? Vivian pressed. Because if all of it went into this lavish lifestyle, where will you find $500,000 alongside 5 years of payments you never provided her? We're talking about over $700,000. That amount made my head spin. $700,000, a lifetime of stability that had been taken away from me. The doorbell sounded. Vivian went to answer it. She came back with a man in his 60s. He wore a dark suit, held a leather briefcase, and had a serious demeanor. "Good evening," the man said. "I am Elias Carter. I regret that we are meeting under these conditions, Mrs. Ames." I got to my feet. My legs felt unsteady. "You talked to me over the phone." "That's correct. I truly regret not pushing to have a direct conversation with you 5 years ago. I believed your son had informed you of everything. That was an error on my part." He took out a large folder from his briefcase. He set it down on the dining table. "Everything is included here. The will, the trust agreement, the administration papers, all signed by your husband and Reggie as the administrator." He opened the folder and started to show me the documents. My sight was blurred from crying, but I could make out some numbers. $500,000, monthly payments of $4,000. My name was on all of the papers as the only beneficiary. "Your husband made it very clear," Elias explained. "This money was intended solely for you. Reggie had the authority to manage it, but was legally required to pay you the monthly amounts without fail. Any misuse of those funds for personal reasons would be a crime." Reggie sank into a chair. Chelsea was weeping quietly. I stayed standing, staring at the documents that symbolized the greatest betrayal I had ever faced. Elias Carter laid out the papers on the table as if they were parts of a dark game. Each document served as further evidence of the deception I had experienced for 5 years. I looked at them but couldn't fully comprehend what I saw. My mind refused to accept the reality of the situation. "Mrs. Ames," the lawyer said, his tone steady but not harsh, "did you receive any monthly payments from this trust in the past 5 years?" "No," I answered in a strained voice. "I was unaware that it existed. Were you ever told about the conditions of your husband's will?" Reggie informed me there were debts we had to address by selling the family home, leaving me with only a small pension. Elias shook his head. "There were no debts. Yes, the house was sold. However, the proceeds from the sale, along with your husband's savings and life insurance, totaled the $500,000 that made up the trust fund. All of it was meant for you. I had to sit down before I collapsed. My legs could not hold me. The house also. Furthermore, your husband clearly instructed to sell the property and add that money to the trust to increase your monthly income. You should have been living well with $4,000 each month without any worries. $4,000 a month for 5 years. I quickly did the math in my head. $240,000 that I never witnessed. $240,000 that my child spent while I saved coins to buy bread. "Reggie," Elias said, facing my son, "where is the cash?" My child had his face buried in his hands. "I put it into what? Into this home, into the business, into the kids' education, into everything. Do you have documentation for those investments, such as account statements or papers that show this money was used to create profit for your mother?" Silence filled the room. "Let me ask differently," the attorney persisted. "Can you return the initial $500,000 along with the monthly payments you owed your mother?" Still more silence, and Chelsea was crying even more intensely. "He can't know," Vivian said with disdain. "He squandered it all on luxuries, on appearances, on a lifestyle that wasn't his own." Elias produced more documents. "Here are the bank statements for the trust fund. In the first year after your husband died, Reggie took out $50,000 for the down payment on this house. Another $100,000 was spent on renovations, $30,000 on a car, and so forth. In 2 years, he had nearly drained the entire principal fund." "And what about the next 3 years?" Vivian asked. "Loans against the trust fund, more transfers, small sums here and there that add up to significant amounts. By the time we became aware, there was almost nothing remaining." "We realized," I echoed. "You were aware of all this." Elias looked down. For the first time, the attorney appeared regretful. "I recognized that Reggie was making transactions. He is the legal administrator, thus he had permission. But I thought you understood that he had consulted you, that there was a family consensus. I never imagined you were completely unaware. Why didn't you contact me for confirmation?" My tone came out more severe than I meant. "I should have. It is my duty as a professional, and I sincerely apologize. However, I must also mention that Reggie repeatedly assured me you were well taken care of, that you were living with them, that you didn't require monthly money since he covered all your costs. I glared at Reggie with a mix of shock and disgust. You told him I was living with you. Reggie didn't respond. He couldn't even look me in the eye. You claimed that? I yelled. I lost my composure. You deceived the attorney, saying you were caring for me while I was alone, eating from cans. Mama, I thought I would eventually bring you to stay with us. When? In 10 years? Never. That was another falsehood. You deceived yourself to have peaceful nights. Chelsea finally spoke. Her voice was high-pitched and pitiful. We wanted to assist you, Delilah, but we had our own costs. The kids require so much. Maintaining the house is costly. It wasn't done out of spite. Vivian laughed, but it lacked sincerity. A happy sound of laughter. It was a laugh that showed disdain. It wasn't done out of hate. So what was it then? Naivety? Greed? Do you really think it's acceptable to take from an old woman because your kids need to attend private schools? We haven't taken anything from her, Chelsea weakly protested. Yes, you have, Elias stated with a tone of authority. That is precisely what you have done. Misuse of fiduciary assets, deceit, and financial exploitation of an elder. All of these are not just civil liabilities, but also criminal acts. Fear appeared on Reggie's face. Criminal? But I'm her child. She wouldn't file charges. Everyone turned to look at me. I remained quiet. I was unsure of what I was experiencing. Too many feelings came rushing in at once. Hurt, anger, betrayal, but also something unfamiliar, something I hadn't experienced in years. Strength, the sensation that I finally had power over my life. What is left of the trust fund? Vivian inquired of Elias. The lawyer checked his documents. Roughly $30,000 remains of the total, $30,000 out of $500,000. My spouse dedicated his entire life to ensuring my security, and his own son had ruined it all in less than 5 years. And what possibilities does my sister have? Vivian continued. Elias fixed his glasses. There are a few. She could initiate a civil lawsuit to recover the stolen money plus damages. She could also file a criminal report for fraud and embezzlement, or she could attempt to come to a private settlement with her son to get the money back. Which one do you suggest? Vivian queried. It depends on Mrs. Ames's objectives. If she wants to retrieve her funds quickly, a private settlement might be faster. If she desires justice and real repercussions, then pursuing legal action would be more suitable, albeit more time-consuming. I stood from my chair and approached the window. Outside, everything appeared ordinary. The neatly trimmed lawn, the lights brightening the block of costly homes. None of it was genuine. Everything was a facade created with my finances and my pain. Mama, Reggie said from behind me, please speak to me. Tell me what you wish for me to do. I turned around gradually. I looked into his eyes, those eyes that used to gaze at me with a child's affection, those eyes that now conveyed only fear and remorse. What do I wish you to do? I echoed his statement. I want you to finally tell me the truth for the first time in 5 years. Did you intend for this to happen all along? When Dad passed away, did you have it in mind to take my money? No, it wasn't exactly that way. Initially, I only borrowed a small amount for the house's down payment. I believed I'd be able to pay it back, but soon we required more and more, and it spiraled out of control. You never considered telling me the truth or giving me a portion of what belonged to me. He looked down. I was worried you would be upset, that you would judge me, and it felt easier for you to let me suffer in silence. You chose to watch me struggle instead of admitting your mistake. You assumed I was all right, that I didn't need much, that I was satisfied with my simple lifestyle. Those words hit me deeply. Satisfied. Did you really think I was satisfied while starving? Satisfied wearing tattered clothes? Satisfied feeling like an inconvenience every time I asked for $200 measly? Mama, don't call me that. To you, a mother was just someone to use and toss aside. Someone whose sacrifices meant nothing. Someone you could deceive and steal from without feeling guilty. Chelsea approached hesitantly. Delilah, please consider the children. If this becomes public, if there's a trial, they will be affected. They could lose their father. I looked at her in disbelief. You want me to think about your children? You, who never thought about me? What will you say to them when they ask why their father is in trouble? He stole from their grandmother, and she dared to stand up for herself. Vivian stood beside me. You don't have to make any decisions right now, Delilah. Take your time. Think carefully about what you want to do. Elias closed his briefcase. Mrs. Ames, I will prepare a complete report regarding everything. Bank activities, transfers, everything documented. Then it's up to you to decide how to use that information. How much time do I have to make a decision? I asked. Legally, you have several years to file a lawsuit, but I suggest acting quickly. The longer you wait, the tougher it will be to reclaim the assets. I nodded. My mind was racing. I needed to leave that place. I needed fresh air. I needed solitude to process everything. I'm leaving, I stated. I'll go with you, Vivian said right away. Reggie stepped forward. Mama, don't go like this. We can talk more. We can. There's nothing left to discuss tonight. I interrupted him. You did what you did. Now I will do what I must. I moved towards the door. Vivian followed me. Elias gathered his belongings and walked with us. Before exiting, I glanced back one last time. Reggie stood in the center of his lavish living room in his upscale house, surrounded by everything he acquired with my money. He, appearing tiny and frightened, I no longer felt sympathy for him. It's my birthday, I said, and I walked away. The quiet inside Vivian's car was nearly overwhelming. She drove while keeping her eyes on the road. I occupied the passenger seat, staring vacantly out the window. The city lights seemed to blur. Perhaps it was also because I couldn't stop the tears. They weren't loud cries. I wasn't wailing. I was just allowing them to flow as my mind tried to comprehend all that had occurred. My 75th birthday had turned out to be the most devastating and enlightening evening of my existence. It was the day I realized that for 5 years I had been preyed upon by my own son. Do you want me to take you back to your place? Vivian asked gently. Yes, I murmured. We continued driving in silence for another quarter of an hour. Upon reaching my building, Vivian turned off the car. Do you want me to come up with you? No, I need some time alone. Delilah, you shouldn't spend tonight by yourself. You've just suffered a significant blow. I've been alone for 5 years. One more night won't make a difference. Vivian sighed. At least, promise me you'll call if you need anything. Anytime. It doesn't matter. I nodded in response. I exited the vehicle and walked towards the entrance. My legs felt heavy, as if I bore the weight of the world. I ascended the stairs at a slow pace. Each step was a struggle. When I finally got to my door, my hands trembled so much that I had difficulty inserting the key into the lock. Entering the apartment, I saw it from a fresh perspective. This dreary space, this cramped room, this kitchen where only one person could fit, and the bathroom with pipes that leaked continuously. All of this was my life, while my son lived in luxury. I sank onto the old sofa that had seen better days and finally released everything. I wept harder than I had since my husband's funeral. I cried for the 5 wasted years, the nights of hunger, the embarrassment of not being able to get my grandchildren suitable Christmas gifts. For every moment I felt worthless, aged, and like a burden. But I also cried with fury, a fury that had been bottled inside for 75 years. Anger directed at a world that taught me silence. Anger towards a life that conditioned me to withstand, and anger towards myself for accepting it all without questioning a thing. I have no idea how long I remained there in the dark. Eventually, I heard a knock on the door. It was Pet. I saw you come in, she said when I opened it. She brought 2 hot mugs. I made tea, and you're having some whether you like it or not. I allowed her to enter. We settled on the sofa together. She didn't pose any questions. She merely waited. After a sip of tea, I shared everything. Every detail, every revelation, every act of betrayal. Pet remained quiet and attentive. When I was done, she placed her cup on the table and grasped my hands. "Delilah, do you realize what just took place tonight? I discovered my son stole from me." "No." "Well, yes, but a more significant event occurred as well. You stopped holding back. You ceased being silent. For the first time in your existence, you sought answers. You called for the truth. And that, my friend, marks the start of everything." "I don't feel powerful," I confessed. "I feel shattered." To be shattered and to be weak aren't the same. At times, you must completely break down to reconstruct yourself in a proper manner, without lies or the burden of others' expectations. Her words struck a chord with me. She was correct. Something had shifted tonight. I hadn't only uncovered the truth, I had also found my voice. The voice I had muted for 75 years because I was raised to believe that proper women don't voice their complaints, that decent mothers forgive all, and that good wives follow orders. "What will you do?" Pet inquired. "I'm not sure yet. The lawyer will send me all the paperwork. I have choices, but I don't know which one I should pick." "Which one frightens you the most?" The question surprised me. Fear. Yes. Sometimes the things that frighten us most are what we truly need to confront. I pondered this. What was my greatest fear? Suing Reggie, filing criminal charges, shattering the flawless image he had constructed? No, what terrified me even more was something else. "I'm scared of being free," I whispered. "I'm scared of having money. I'm afraid of not needing him because then I wouldn't have a reason to stay invisible, to remain small, to keep accepting the bare minimum." Pet offered a sad smile. "That is precisely what you must confront." She remained with me late into the night. When she finally departed, I lay awake in the darkness, contemplating, reminiscing, processing. I remembered the little girl I once was, the one who aspired to be a teacher. But my parents said women didn't need much education, that it was better to marry young and start a family. I recalled the young woman who wished to work. However, my husband insisted that wives should be at home, that their duty was to care for the children and maintain the household. I remembered the mother who wanted to pursue things for herself, but my kids told me to rest, that I had done enough, that they would handle everything. My entire life had been a series of voices dictating what I should do, think, and feel. I obeyed because I thought that was love. I believed that putting myself last was right. I thought that fading away was noble. But tonight, I learned something. Sacrifice without receiving anything in return is not love, it is self-destruction. And I had been harming myself for 75 years, convinced I was acting virtuously. The following few days were unusual. As he had promised, Elias Carter sent me all the necessary paperwork. There were bulky files packed with details illustrating every dollar Reggie had taken, every transaction, and every deceit detailed in the financial records. Vivian came to see me daily. She assisted me in going through the documents. She clarified legal phrases that I found confusing. She kept reminding me that I wasn't at fault, that it was entirely Reggie's wrongdoing. Reggie called frequently. He left numerous messages that were full of desperation, where he vowed to return everything. In some, he cried and sought my forgiveness. I chose not to respond to any of them. I felt unprepared. Chelsea reached out as well. Her messages had a different tone. They were justifications, attempts to instill guilt in me. She urged me to consider the family. She said I was being selfish. The kids depended on me, as if I had any obligation towards them after how they treated me. Pet spent time with me in the afternoons. We enjoyed tea together. We chatted about a variety of subjects. She recounted experiences from her life, instances when her children had also let her down, how she had learned to enforce boundaries, to say no, and prioritize herself without feeling remorse. One day, she asked me, "Do you see the difference between us and the generation of our daughters? They believe they can have everything. We were raised to think we were worthy of nothing, and both ideas are incorrect." A week post my birthday, Vivian came with a suggestion. "I have been speaking with Elias," she said, as she settled down on my couch. I think we have a plan. What type of plan? One that will restore not just your money, but also your dignity. One that ensures Reggie faces the consequences while also protecting the children who are innocent. I paid attention as Vivian described the strategy. It was clever. It was just. Yet, it was also unyielding. It would need me to stand strong, not to yield, and not to let feelings of guilt or maternal instincts cause me to waver. Will I be able to do it? I muttered, though it was more a question for myself. You certainly can, Vivian encouraged, but only if you genuinely wish to. No one will criticize you if you choose to forgive and move on. It's entirely your choice. What would you do? My sister looked at me with intention. I already know what my choice would be, but I am not you. I didn't spend 5 years living in this place. I didn't need to sell my things just to eat. I didn't have to stand by while my own son treated me like trash while he used my money. This choice is solely yours to make. I couldn't sleep that night. I wandered through the tiny apartment, considering different paths, picturing possibilities. Eventually, as dawn broke, clarity struck me regarding my course of action. For the first time in 5 years, perhaps in 75, I felt confident about a choice, not because somebody advised me it was the right path, but because I recognized it was. I gazed into the bathroom mirror, staring at the woman looking back at me. She was 75, with deep lines on her face, hair completely white, hands worn from countless years of cleaning, cooking, and caring for others. But I noticed something fresh in her eyes, something that hadn't been present before. Resolve, strength, a quiet kind of strength that is not about yelling or battling. It comes from understanding your value and refusing to let anyone diminish it again. I don't have to raise my voice to be acknowledged, I told my reflection. I just need to stop bringing it down. I picked up the phone and called Elias Carter. When he picked up, I spoke the words that would change everything. I want to file charges. We will reclaim what is mine, and we'll do it the right way, with justice and dignity, but without sympathy. 3 days later, Reggie and Chelsea were sitting opposite me in Elias Carter's office. The lawyer had arranged this meeting as part of the plan, a final opportunity to clear things up without going to trial, a situation where I would have total control. Reggie appeared disheveled, with hollow eyes, unshaven stubble, and wrinkled clothes. Chelsea sat rigidly in her chair, arms crossed, with a look of victimization that made me feel sick. Vivian sat beside me, while Elias was at his desk, paperwork piled high. I sat in the middle, composed, resolute, and prepared. "Thank you for attending," Elias started. "We're here to reach a settlement that prevents a lengthy and expensive legal battle for both sides." Before he could finish, Mama Reggie interrupted. "I just want to say I'm sorry. I truly am. I know there's nothing that can make up for what I did, but I promise I will repay everything." I raised my hand to silence her. "Not yet. First, you will listen." He fell silent. He resembled a child being reprimanded, but I felt no sympathy for him anymore. "For 5 years, I began, my tone soft yet strong. You took from me. You deceived me. You allowed me to suffer in poverty while you lavished my money on yourself. You made me feel like I was a burden, as if I should thank you for the scraps you provided. All that time you were aware of the truth, yet you remained silent." "Mama, I'm not done yet." I interrupted him. "You had so many chances to be honest with me, 1,000 opportunities to do what was right. Each time, you picked the deception. You opted for your own comfort instead of considering my well-being. Now, things are different. Now it's my decision." Elias set the papers on the table. "Here are the choices. First option, we can initiate a civil lawsuit concerning the misuse of fiduciary funds. We'd ask for a full refund of the money along with damages. This would cover real interest and compensation for emotional pain. We're discussing about $800,000. Reggie protested. "I don't have that amount." "Then sell this house," Vivian replied coldly. "You sell the cars, liquidate everything, and if that's not sufficient, you'll spend your life repaying the debt. Elias continued with the second option. We can file criminal charges, charges like fraud, financial exploitation of an elder, and theft of funds. These offenses could result in 5 to 10 years behind bars. Chelsea cried. You can't do that. The kids need their dad. The children must understand that there are consequences for their actions. I told her that stealing from your own mother won't be overlooked. Elias proposed a third option. We create a private settlement. You return the money based on conditions your mother decides. You'll sign legal papers acknowledging you owe the debt, and if you fail to comply, we will move forward with the first two options. What would those conditions be? Reggie asked, his voice trembling. I turned to Elias. He nodded, indicating it was my moment to speak. You will sell the house, I stated right away. That house was purchased with my money. It does not belong to you anymore. Where are we going to stay? Chelsea cried out in panic. Wherever you can afford with your own money, just like I had to manage for 5 years. You will liquidate the investment accounts, I added. You will sell the luxury car. You will move all that money to a new account in my name, which Elias will oversee. That won't be enough, Reggie argued. The house has a mortgage. I owe money. Then you will work to repay it. You will give me $3,000 each month for the next 20 years if that's needed, legally documented with interest. And if you fail to make even one payment, I will initiate the lawsuit and the criminal charges. That's too much, Chelsea complained. We have bills to pay. The kids can attend public schools, Vivian interrupted her. Just like millions of children across the nation, they won't be harmed by the absence of private tennis coaching. Additionally, I said, I desire something more. I need you to share the truth with your children. I want you to clarify for them precisely what steps you took to instill in them that stealing is wrong, even if it is from family. Especially if it is from family. Tears streamed down Reggie's cheeks. Mama, are you planning to ruin my family? No, I said decisively. You ruined your family when you decided to steal from me. I am merely taking back what is rightfully mine. And if your family does not endure this, it is because it was founded on falsehoods from the start. Elias slid the documents toward Reggie. You have 2 choices. You can sign this agreement now, or we will see you in court next week. The choice is yours. Reggie glanced at the papers, then at Chelsea, then at Vivian. Finally, he turned to me, looking for sympathy, hoping I would give in, appealing to the mother who always forgave everything. But that mother was gone. Sign, I instructed, or confront the full repercussions of your actions. With shaking hands, Reggie reached for the pen. He went through the documents. Each page reminded him of his treachery. Every clause represented a price he would need to pay. I sign. Chelsea was also required to sign as a co-debtor. Both were obliged to return everything, liquidate assets, make monthly payments, and face severe legal ramifications if they failed to comply. Once they were done, Elias gathered the documents. These are legally binding. You have 30 days to sell the property and transfer the initial amount. The monthly payments will start next month. Reggie remained seated, devastated, but I didn't feel triumphant. I only experienced profound fatigue, the fatigue of 75 years of shouldering others' expectations. Is there anything else you wish to say to me? I asked him. Will you ever forgive me? His voice was barely audible. I don't know, I answered truthfully. Maybe, maybe not, but that no longer depends on you. You made your choices. Now I will continue my life with or without your remorse. I stood up. Vivian joined me. We exited that office, leaving behind a son who had encountered the hardest lesson of his life. The lesson that even mothers have boundaries, that love doesn't mean tolerating mistreatment, that forgiveness doesn't imply forgetting or allowing it to recur. Outside, the sun was shining. It was a lovely day. And for the first time in 5 years, I was able to appreciate the beauty without it being clouded by financial worries. How do you feel? Vivian inquired. Free? I replied. At last, free. 6 months later, I was sitting on the balcony of my new apartment enjoying coffee. Not the watery instant coffee, but genuine coffee brewed from newly ground beans, the type of coffee I had often seen in shops, yet had never permitted myself to purchase. The apartment was not expansive, but it belonged to me. It featured 2 bedrooms, a complete kitchen, a functioning bathroom, and this little balcony where I could observe the sunrise each morning. I rented it using the money I got from selling Reggie's home. Elias managed the entire process flawlessly. The house was sold in just 3 weeks. After settling the mortgage and debts, $200,000 was deposited right into my account. The cars were sold off, the accounts were closed. Altogether, I managed to recover almost $300,000. Although it wasn't the original $500,000, it was sufficient, even more than sufficient for a 75-year-old woman who simply sought tranquility and dignity. Elias reinvested the funds into a new trust. This time, I was the only one in charge. No one else could access it. No one else could decide on my future. Each month, $10,500 was delivered punctually into my account, along with Reggie's extra $3,000, for the time being. Vivian came to see me regularly. At times, we dined at nice restaurants for lunch. Other occasions, we strolled in the park discussing life. She assisted me in awakening my perspective, finding my voice, and realizing that strength isn't about raising your voice. It's about recognizing your self-worth and ensuring that no one takes it from you. Pet remained my friend. Although we no longer shared the same building, we crossed paths nearly every day. We enjoyed tea while exchanging stories. She taught me that authentic friendship doesn't need shared genes. It just needs respect and honesty. My conversations with Reggie were limited. He called once a month for brief, awkward chats. He informed me they had moved to a smaller apartment, that Chelsea needed to find employment, and that the kids were adjusting to public school. He inquired about my well-being. I responded with single-syllable words. I had not forgiven him. I doubted if I ever would. But there was something more crucial than forgiveness. I had discovered peace. Peace with what had happened. Peace with the choices I made. Peace within myself. The grandchildren occasionally sent me texts, brief, perplexing messages. Reggie had shared a softened version of the situation with them. He informed them that he had made a mistake with Grandma's finances and was working to fix it. The kids didn't fully grasp it, but that was acceptable. They would come to understand it one day. I began engaging in activities I had never permitted myself to try. I enrolled in painting classes. It turned out I had a gift for landscape art. Nothing formal, but I enjoyed it. It brought me joy, and that was sufficient. I became a member of a book group at the local library. Women around my age gather weekly to discuss literature. Some had similar experiences to mine. They spoke of children who disappointed them and families who took advantage of them. We were all beginning to learn how to prioritize ourselves after 75 years of putting others first. One afternoon, as I painted on my balcony, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. I hesitated to pick up, but something urged me to answer. A young woman's voice introduced herself as Maria, saying, "Yes, that's me. I'm a social worker from the community center. A member of your book club shared your story with our coordinator, and we were hoping you'd like to talk with other older women dealing with family financial abuse." I remained silent, considering her offer. "There's no need to decide right away," Maria continued. "We think your experience could assist other women in realizing they are not alone and finding their voice." "Let me think it over," I said. That night, I struggled to sleep as I reflected on the phone call. I could help others by sharing my journey. For 75 years, I had felt unseen, silent. Now I was preparing to speak publicly. The next day, I shared this with Vivian. She smiled and reminded me, "Remember what I told you a few months back? Sometimes you have to break down to rebuild properly. You have broken down, you have reconstructed yourself, and now you can support others in doing the same." "I'm afraid," I confessed. "Fear is good," she replied. "It shows it matters. It shows it's real." A week later, I found myself in a circle with 10 women at the community center, all over 60, each with stories of being used, robbed, and made to feel invisible by their families. I shared my tale, without adding any exaggeration or softening the details. It was the entire truth, the trust fund, the betrayal, the hardships, and also the healing, the justice, and the tranquility. Upon finishing, there were tears in everyone's eyes, yet there was something more: hope, recognition, the realization that they weren't alone, that they weren't the only ones, and that there was a pathway forward. One woman shyly raised her hand and asked, "How did you gather the strength to confront them?" I answered sincerely, "I didn't discover it. I built it step by step, choice by choice, by ceasing to accept what was poisoning me, by realizing that my voice mattered, that my life mattered, that I mattered." It's been nearly a year since that night of awakening, the event that transformed everything. I still reside in my apartment with a balcony. I still paint. I still read. I still enjoy real coffee every morning. Additionally, I now do something else. Twice a month, I gather with that group of women. I assist them in understanding their rights. I accompany and encourage them to seek legal advice. I stand by them when they feel scared. I remind them that prioritizing their own needs is not selfish, that establishing limits is not unkind, and that they deserve respect no matter their age. Reggie continues to pay. Chelsea is still employed. The grandchildren are maturing. Perhaps one day our relationship will get better, or perhaps it won't. Yet that no longer determines my value or my joy. This morning, as I sipped my coffee and observed the dawn, I reflected on my whole journey. The person I used to be a year ago was unnoticed, quiet, and believed her worth was only in helping others. Now, as I think of the woman I've become, I see someone who is noticed with a voice, believing her worth is simply in being herself. I stood up and faced the mirror. The same 75-year-old woman was staring back at me. The same wrinkles, the same gray hair, but her eyes were transformed. They no longer showed defeat. They radiated calmness, strength, and purpose. They took my years and called it care, I told my reflection. But I took them back in silence with honesty and bravery. I smiled. A genuine smile, one that stems from within, because I finally grasped something essential. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Strength isn't always aggressive. Sometimes it's peaceful. And true freedom doesn't always originate from the outside. Sometimes it arises from within. It's about recognizing that you are worthy of more and then taking the steps necessary to attain it. Did you enjoy my tale? Where are you listening from? Let's connect in the comments. If you appreciated the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks, which will help me share more stories like this. Thank you very much for your kind support. I look forward to your thoughts on the story. On your screen, you can find 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There is plenty more on my channel. Remember to subscribe. Until we meet again in the next life story, with love and respect.